Family shares everything. My mother's voice echoed in my head as I stood in the empty parking space where my car should have been. The space where my blue Honda Civic, the one I'd spent 3 years paying off with double shifts and skipped vacations, had been parked just hours earlier. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone and called my sister Emma for the 3rd time. Straight to voicemail again. I already knew what had happened. The spare key I'd left at my parents' house during my last visit was gone, and so was my car. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Olivia Morgan, and until 6 months ago, I believed that family meant unconditional support. I believed that the word sister meant someone who had your back. I believed that parents meant people who treated their children equally. I was wrong on all counts. I'd worked at Blackwell Marketing for 3 years. Nothing fancy, just steady work that paid the bills for my small apartment in Westview Heights. Every morning, I'd drive my Honda Civic, the first big purchase I'd made on my own, to the office, put in my hours creating digital campaigns, and come home. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. All mine. Something I'd built without my family's help or interference. Growing up in the Morgan household meant living in Emma's shadow. My sister was 3 years older, effortlessly beautiful, and our parents, clear favorite. While I was the quiet one with my nose in books, Emma was the social butterfly who brought home trophies and popular friends. Our parents, Diane and Robert Morgan, never tried to hide their preference. "Why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. When our grandmother passed away 2 years ago, she left me her antique watch. It was the first time anyone in the family had singled me out for something special. Emma had received most of Grandma's jewelry, but the watch, an elegant silver timepiece with delicate engravings, was specifically bequeathed to me. "For Olivia," the will had said, "who values time and uses it wisely." I wore it every day, a reminder that someone had seen me. The trouble started when Emma and her husband, Nathan, hit a rough patch. Their real estate business was struggling after the market downturn, and suddenly my sister was calling more often, stopping by my apartment unannounced, and reminiscing about our childhood as if we'd been best friends. I was cautious, but hopeful. Maybe we could finally have the relationship I'd always wanted. One Tuesday evening, I came home from work to find Emma sitting outside my apartment. Her eyes were red, and she immediately launched into a story about how Nathan had said something hurtful, how they'd fought, and how she needed a place to stay, just for the night. I made up the sofa bed and ordered pizza. We stayed up late, talking, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had a sister instead of a competitor. One night turned into 3, then a week. Emma worked remotely from my living room, took hour-long showers that used all the hot water, and borrowed my clothes without asking. When I'd gently mention these things, she'd tear up and say, "I thought we were finally getting close again. I guess I was wrong." The guilt would wash over me immediately, and I'd back down. The breaking point came when I discovered my grandmother's watch was missing from my jewelry box. When confronted, Emma casually mentioned she'd borrowed it for a client meeting because it matched her outfit perfectly. She returned it 2 days later with a scratch on the face that hadn't been there before. "It's just a watch, Olivia," she said, rolling her eyes when I pointed out the damage. "Family shares everything, remember? That's what Mom always says." I asked Emma to find another place to stay by the end of the week. She left that evening, slamming the door behind her and telling me I was just like I'd always been, selfish and jealous. I cried myself to sleep that night, wondering if she was right. 2 weeks later, I pulled into my parents' driveway for our monthly Sunday dinner. Emma's car was already there, along with our parents' vehicles. As I stepped through the front door, I heard laughter from the dining room. Warm, genuine laughter that stopped abruptly when I appeared in the doorway. "Oh, Olivia's here," my mom said, her smile fading slightly. Emma was just telling us about her new listing. It's in that neighborhood you always loved as a kid. Dinner was tense. Every time I tried to share something about work or my life, Emma would interrupt with a more exciting story, or my parents would steer the conversation back to her. When I mentioned I was considering applying for a promotion, my father frowned. "Are you sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility? Emma was already managing a team of 5 at your age." I left early, making an excuse about work the next day. As I was saying goodbye, my mother pressed a container of leftovers into my hands and said, "We were thinking of going to the lake house next weekend. Emma and Nathan are coming. You should join us." "I can't," I said. "I have plans." I didn't, but spending a weekend watching my family fawn over Emma sounded like torture. My mother sighed. "You never make time for family anymore. Family should come first, Olivia." I left my spare car key on the kitchen counter that night. I'd only kept it at their house for emergencies, but something told me it wasn't safe there anymore. A week later, I got a text from Emma. "Can I borrow your car this weekend? Mine's in the shop and I have showings all over town. I'll fill up the tank." I politely declined, explaining that I needed my car for errands. Emma didn't respond, which should have been my first warning. Saturday morning, I woke up early, planning to drive to a hiking trail outside of town, a rare day off when I could clear my head. But when I went to the parking lot, my car was gone. At first, I thought it had been towed or stolen. Then I remembered my sister's text. I called Emma repeatedly. No answer. I called my parents. "Oh, your sister mentioned you were letting her use your car," my mother said casually. "That's so sweet of you, Olivia. Family shares everything after all." "I didn't let her use it," I said, my voice shaking. She took it without asking. "That's stealing, Mom." My mother's tone turned icy. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a car, and she's your sister. She needs it for work this weekend. You can use the bus for whatever errands you have." I hung up and sat on the curb outside my apartment building, tears of frustration rolling down my cheeks. This wasn't about the car. Not really. It was about respect, about boundaries, about years of being treated as less important, less valuable, less worthy than my sister. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I was done being the family doormat. I pulled out my phone again and called the police to report my car stolen. The officer who took my report was kind but skeptical when I explained the situation. "Family disputes are complicated," he said. "Since she has a key and your mother confirms you're aware she has the vehicle, this is more of a civil matter." I felt defeated again until a text message came through from an unknown number. "This is Tyler from Blackwell. Got your number from Mark. Heard you need legal advice? My cousin Julia is a lawyer. She helped me when my roommate refused to move out. Here's her number." Tyler was a graphic designer at my company. We'd only worked on a couple of projects together. I'd mentioned my situation during a coffee break on Friday, not expecting anything to come from it. I hesitated, then called the number. Julia Martinez answered on the second ring. After hearing my story, she didn't hesitate. "What your sister did is unauthorized use of a vehicle. The car is registered solely in your name, correct? And you explicitly told her she couldn't use it? This isn't a family sharing issue, it's a legal one." That Monday, Emma returned my car with an empty tank and a new scratch on the passenger door. She tossed the keys at me in the parking lot. "There's your precious car. I don't know why you're being so petty about this." I handed her an envelope. "This is a formal notice that you are not authorized to use my vehicle at any time. If you take it again, I will press charges." Emma's face flushed red. "Are you serious right now? It's just a car. What is wrong with you?" "Nothing is wrong with me," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm setting a boundary." She stormed off, and within an hour, my phone was blowing up with messages from my parents. How could I treat my sister this way? Why was I being so difficult? Families should support each other without conditions. Didn't I know Emma was going through a hard time? The following Sunday, I didn't go to family dinner. Instead, I met Tyler and Julia at Morning Brew Cafe. Tyler brought his laptop and helped me document everything. Every borrowed item never returned. Every time my boundaries had been crossed. Every dismissive comment from my parents. Julia listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or offering legal perspective. "What you're describing is a pattern of emotional manipulation," Julia said, "combined with the unauthorized use of your vehicle and taking your property without permission. These are real issues, not family squabbles." "So what do I do?" I asked. "They're still my family." "Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting ties," Julia explained. "It means being clear about what's acceptable and what isn't, and being willing to enforce those boundaries with consequences." The next day, I received a certified letter from my parents' lawyer, David Cohen. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Emma was claiming I had gifted her my grandmother's watch weeks ago and was now maliciously trying to take it back. The letter demanded I cease harassment and suggested that family matters should remain private. I felt that familiar sinking feeling, the one that told me to back down, to apologize, to keep the peace. But then I glanced at my bare wrist where my grandmother's watch should have been and felt a surge of resolve. Julia helped me draft a response, clear and firm. The watch was specifically left to me in my grandmother's will. I had never gifted it to Emma. I would be happy to resolve this matter amicably, but I would not be bullied or manipulated. 3 days later, the watch appeared in my mailbox with a terse note from Emma. Not worth the drama. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done. But it was a start. Over the next few weeks, I maintained my distance while considering my next steps. I declined Sunday dinners and ignored the guilt-laden texts from my mother. I focused on work, applied for that promotion, and started spending more time with Tyler and other colleagues who treated me with respect. Then, an unexpected call came from Linda Wilson, my mother's oldest friend, and someone who had always been kind to me, growing up. "Your mom asked me to reach out," she said. "She's worried about you, the whole family is." I expected the usual pressure to reconcile, to forgive and forget. Instead, Linda surprised me. "I've known your family for 30 years, Olivia. I've watched how they treat you, and it's not right. It never has been. Your mother called me because she respects my opinion, and I told her something she didn't want to hear, that she's at risk of losing her daughter entirely if she doesn't change." My throat tightened. "Thank you for saying that. No one's ever acknowledged it before." "Sometimes families develop unhealthy patterns," Linda continued. "And breaking those patterns is hard, uncomfortable work, but it's necessary work. Your parents and sister are upset because you're changing the rules of a game that's always worked in their favor." 2 days later, my mother called. Her voice was different, hesitant, almost vulnerable. "Can we meet? Just you and me? Please?" We met at Evergreen Park, neutral territory. My mother looked smaller somehow, sitting on a bench by the duck pond. For the first time in my life, I saw her as a person with her own insecurities and flaws, not just as mom, who always favored Emma. "Linda helped me see some things," she said without preamble. "Things I didn't want to see about how we've treated you. I'm not good at admitting when I'm wrong, Olivia. But I was wrong. We all were." I didn't speak, afraid that if I broke the moment, she would revert to her usual defenses. "Your father and I talked all night," she continued, "about patterns. We learned from our own parents, about how we've always given Emma more because she seemed to need more, about how unfair that's been to you." She reached for my hand. "I'm sorry, Olivia. truly sorry." It wasn't an instant fix. One conversation couldn't undo years of unequal treatment, but it was a beginning, an acknowledgement that something had been broken and needed repair. 2 weeks later, my mother invited me to a family meeting at their house. I was wary but agreed to attend. Emma was there with Nathan, looking uncomfortable. My father sat stiffly in his armchair. My mother had printed out what looked like articles on family dynamics and healthy boundaries. "We've been doing some reading," she explained, "and talking to Linda. We want to do better as a family." Emma wouldn't meet my eyes at first. When she finally spoke, her words came out in a rush. "I've been horrible to you. I knew it was wrong to take your car and your watch. I knew it all along. But you've always been the responsible one, the one who has it together. It made me jealous, and I wanted to prove I could take something from you." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. And honesty was what we needed. My father cleared his throat. "We're going to counseling, all of us if you're willing, to figure out how to be a real family, one that respects each person's boundaries and needs." I agreed to try. Not because I was falling back into old patterns, but because I was choosing to set new ones. 6 months later, things aren't perfect. We still have difficult moments and old habits that creep in, but now we have tools to recognize them and address them. We meet with a family therapist twice a month. I have my grandmother's watch back, secured in a safe in my apartment. My car has a new security system, and only I have the keys. Most importantly, I have my voice. The quiet girl who lived in her sister's shadow has stepped into the light. The woman who allowed her boundaries to be trampled now stands firm in her truth. The daughter who accepted less than she deserved now expects and receives more. Last week, I got that promotion at work. When I shared the news at family dinner, my father raised his glass. "To Olivia," he said, "who taught us all what it means to stand up for yourself with dignity and courage." My mother squeezed my hand under the table. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Emma met my eyes across the table and gave me a small, genuine smile. "Me too," she said. And for the first time in our adult lives, I believed her. Family might share things: love, memories, connections, history. But I've learned that sharing must come with respect, with permission, with boundaries. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to teach them how to treat you properly. As for Julia Martinez, she's not just my lawyer anymore. She's become a friend. She helped me navigate the legal aspects of protecting my assets, but more importantly, she showed me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. And Tyler from work? We're dating now. Turns out, someone who respects your boundaries from the beginning makes for a pretty great partner. The journey from doormat to self-advocate wasn't easy. There were tears and confrontations, setbacks and doubts. But on the other side of that difficult journey was something I'd never experienced before: respect. From my family, yes, but more critically, from myself. Sometimes it takes a lawyer's letter to make your family see you clearly. Sometimes it takes distance to create healthy closeness. And sometimes it takes losing the old version of yourself to find the person you were always meant to be. One Tuesday evening, I came home from work to find Emma sitting outside my apartment. Her eyes were red, and she immediately launched into a story about how Nathan had said something hurtful, how they'd fought, and how she needed a place to stay, just for the night. I made up the sofa bed and ordered pizza. We stayed up late, talking, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had a sister instead of a competitor. One night turned into 3, then a week. Emma worked remotely from my living room, took hour-long showers that used all the hot water, and borrowed my clothes without asking. When I'd gently mention these things, she'd tear up and say, "I thought we were finally getting close again. I guess I was wrong." The guilt would wash over me immediately, and I'd back down. The breaking point came when I discovered my grandmother's watch was missing from my jewelry box. When confronted, Emma casually mentioned she'd borrowed it for a client meeting because it matched her outfit perfectly. She returned it 2 days later with a scratch on the face that hadn't been there before. "It's just a watch, Olivia," she said, rolling her eyes when I pointed out the damage. "Family shares everything, remember? That's what Mom always says." I asked Emma to find another place to stay by the end of the week. She left that evening, slamming the door behind her and telling me I was just like I'd always been, selfish and jealous. I cried myself to sleep that night, wondering if she was right. 2 weeks later, I pulled into my parents' driveway for our monthly Sunday dinner. Emma's car was already there, along with our parents' vehicles. As I stepped through the front door, I heard laughter from the dining room, warm, genuine laughter that stopped abruptly when I appeared in the doorway. "Oh, Olivia's here," my mom said, her smile fading slightly. "Emma was just telling us about her new listing. It's in that neighborhood you always loved as a kid." Dinner was tense. Every time I tried to share something about work or my life, Emma would interrupt with a more exciting story, or my parents would steer the conversation back to her. When I mentioned I was considering applying for a promotion, my father frowned. "Are you sure you're ready for that kind of responsibility? Emma was already managing a team of 5 at your age." I left early, making an excuse about work the next day. As I was saying goodbye, my mother pressed a container of leftovers into my hands and said, "We were thinking of going to the lake house next weekend. Emma and Nathan are coming. You should join us." "I can't," I said. "I have plans." I didn't. But spending a weekend watching my family fawn over Emma sounded like torture. My mother sighed. "You never make time for family anymore. Family should come first, Olivia." I left my spare car key on the kitchen counter that night. I'd only kept it at their house for emergencies, but something told me it wasn't safe there anymore. A week later, I got a text from Emma. "Can I borrow your car this weekend? Mine's in the shop and I have showings all over town. I'll fill up." The tank. I politely declined, explaining that I needed my car for errands. Emma didn't respond, which should have been my first warning. Saturday morning, I woke up early, planning to drive to a hiking trail outside of town. A rare day off when I could clear my head. But when I went to the parking lot, my car was gone. At first, I thought it had been towed or stolen. Then I remembered my sister's text. I called Emma repeatedly. No answer. I called my parents. "Oh, your sister mentioned you were letting her use your car," my mother said casually. "That's so sweet of you, Olivia. Family shares everything after all." "I didn't let her use it," I said, my voice shaking. "She took it without asking. That's stealing, Mom." My mother's tone turned icy. "Don't be dramatic. It's just a car. And she's your sister. She needs it for work this weekend. You can use the bus for whatever errands you have." I hung up and sat on the curb outside my apartment building, tears of frustration rolling down my cheeks. This wasn't about the car, not really. It was about respect, about boundaries, about years of being treated as less important, less valuable, less worthy than my sister. In that moment, something inside me snapped. I was done being the family doormat. I pulled out my phone again and called the police to report my car stolen. The officer who took my report was kind but skeptical when I explained the situation. "Family disputes are complicated," he said. "Since she has a key and your mother confirms you're aware she has the vehicle, this is more of a civil matter." I felt defeated again, until a text message came through from an unknown number. "This is Tyler from Blackwell. Got your number from Mark. Heard you need legal advice. My cousin Julia is a lawyer. She helped me when my roommate refused to move out. Here's her number." Tyler was a graphic designer at my company. We'd only worked on a couple of projects together. I'd mentioned my situation during a coffee break on Friday, not expecting anything to come from it. I hesitated, then called the number. Julia Martinez answered on the second ring. After hearing my story, she didn't hesitate. What your sister did is unauthorized use of a vehicle. The car is registered solely in your name, correct? And you explicitly told her she couldn't use it? This isn't a family sharing issue, it's a legal one. That Monday, Emma returned my car with an empty tank and a new scratch on the passenger door. She tossed the keys at me in the parking lot. "There's your precious car. I don't know why you're being so petty about this." I handed her an envelope. "This is a formal notice that you are not authorized to use my vehicle at any time. If you take it again, I will press charges." Emma's face flushed red. "Are you serious right now? It's just a car. What is wrong with you?" "Nothing is wrong with me," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm setting a boundary." She stormed off, and within an hour, my phone was blowing up with messages from my parents. How could I treat my sister this way? Why was I being so difficult? Families should support each other without conditions. Didn't I know Emma was going through a hard time? The following Sunday, I didn't go to family dinner. Instead, I met Tyler and Julia at Morning Brew Cafe. Tyler brought his laptop and helped me document everything. Every borrowed item never returned, every time my boundaries had been crossed, every dismissive comment from my parents. Julia listened attentively, occasionally asking questions or offering legal perspective. "What you're describing is a pattern of emotional manipulation," Julia said, "combined with the unauthorized use of your vehicle and taking your property without permission. These are real issues, not family squabbles." "So what do I do?" I asked. "They're still my family." "Setting boundaries doesn't mean cutting ties," Julia explained. "It means being clear about what's acceptable and what isn't, and being willing to enforce those boundaries with consequences." The next day, I received a certified letter from my parents' lawyer, David Cohen. Emma was claiming I had gifted her my grandmother's watch weeks ago and was now maliciously trying to take it back. The letter demanded I cease harassment and suggested that family matters should remain private. I felt that familiar sinking feeling, the one that told me to back down, to apologize, to keep the peace. But then I glanced at my bare wrist where my grandmother's watch should have been and felt a surge of resolve. Julia helped me draft a response, clear and firm. The watch was specifically left to me in my grandmother's will. I had never gifted it to Emma. I would be happy to resolve this matter amicably, but I would not be bullied or manipulated. 3 days later, the watch appeared in my mailbox with a terse note from Emma. Not worth the drama. No apology, no acknowledgement of what she'd done, but it was a start. Over the next few weeks, I maintained my distance while considering my next steps. I declined Sunday dinners and ignored the guilt-laden texts from my mother. I focused on work, applied for that promotion, and started spending more time with Tyler and other colleagues who treated me with respect. Then, an unexpected call came. From Linda Wilson, my mother's oldest friend, and someone who had always been kind to me growing up. "Your mom asked me to reach out," she said. "She's worried about you. The whole family is." I expected the usual pressure to reconcile, to forgive and forget. Instead, Linda surprised me. "I've known your family for 30 years, Olivia. I've watched how they treat you, and it's not right. It never has been. Your mother called me because she respects my opinion, and I told her something she didn't want to hear, that she's at risk of losing her daughter entirely if she doesn't change." My throat tightened. "Thank you for saying that. No one's ever acknowledged it before." "Sometimes families develop unhealthy patterns," Linda continued. "And breaking those patterns is hard, uncomfortable work. But it's necessary work. Your parents and sister are upset because you're changing the rules of a game that's always worked in their favor." 2 days later, my mother called. Her voice was different, hesitant, almost vulnerable. "Can we meet? Just you and me? Please?" We met at Evergreen Park, neutral territory. My mother looked smaller somehow, sitting on a bench by the duck pond. For the first time in my life, I saw her as a person with her own insecurities and flaws, not just as Mom, who always favored Emma. "Linda helped me see some things," she said without preamble. "Things I didn't want to see about how we've treated you. I'm not good at admitting when I'm wrong, Olivia. But I was wrong. We all were." I didn't speak, afraid that if I broke the moment, she would revert to her usual defenses. "Your father and I talked all night," she continued, "about patterns. We learned from our own parents, about how we've always given Emma more because she seemed to need more, about how unfair that's been to you." She reached for my hand. "I'm sorry, Olivia. Truly sorry." It wasn't an instant fix. One conversation couldn't undo years of unequal treatment, but it was a beginning, an acknowledgement that something had been broken and needed repair. 2 weeks later, my mother invited me to a family meeting at their house. I was wary but agreed to attend. Emma was there with Nathan, looking uncomfortable. My father sat stiffly in his armchair. My mother had printed out what looked like articles on family dynamics and healthy boundaries. "We've been doing some reading," she explained, "and talking to Linda. We want to do better as a family." Emma wouldn't meet my eyes at first. When she finally spoke, her words came out in a rush. "I've been horrible to you. I knew it was wrong to take your car and your watch. I knew it all, along. But you've always been the responsible one, the one who has it together. It made me jealous, and I wanted to prove I could take something from you." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was honest. And honesty was what we needed. My father cleared his throat. "We're going to counseling, all of us if you're willing, to figure out how to be a real family, one that respects each person's boundaries and needs." I agreed to try. Not because I was falling back into old patterns, but because I was choosing to set new ones. 6 months later, things aren't perfect. We still have difficult moments and old habits that creep in. But now we have tools to recognize them and address them. We meet with a family therapist twice a month. I have my grandmother's watch back, secured in a safe in my apartment. My car has a new security system, and only I have the keys. Most importantly, I have my voice. The quiet girl who lived in her sister's shadow has stepped into the light. The woman who allowed her boundaries to be trampled now stands firm in her truth. The daughter who accepted less than she deserved now expects and receives more. Last week, I got that promotion at work. When I shared the news at family dinner, my father raised his glass. "To Olivia," he said, "who taught us all what it means to stand up for yourself with dignity and courage." My mother squeezed my hand under the table. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. Emma met my eyes across the table and gave me a small, genuine smile. "Me too," she said. And for the first time in our adult lives, I believed her. Family might share things: love, memories, connections, history. But I've learned that sharing must come with respect, with permission, with boundaries. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for your family is to teach them how to treat you properly. As for Julia Martinez, she's not just my lawyer anymore. She's become a friend. She helped me navigate the legal aspects of protecting my assets, but more importantly, she showed me that standing up for yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. And Tyler from work? We're dating now. Turns out someone who respects your boundaries from the beginning makes for a pretty great partner. The journey from doormat to self-advocate wasn't easy. There were tears and confrontations, setbacks and doubts. But on the other side of that difficult journey was something I'd never experienced before. Respect. From my family, yes, but more critically, from myself. Sometimes it takes a lawyer's letter to make your family see you clearly. Sometimes it takes distance to create healthy closeness. And sometimes it takes losing the old version of yourself to find the person you were always meant to be. Looking back, I realize now that the day my car disappeared was actually the day I started finding myself. Funny how something that felt so devastating became the catalyst for the most important growth of my life. The struggle wasn't over, though, not by a long shot. While my immediate family was making efforts to change, my extended family had yet to get the memo. At the Morgan family reunion that summer, a tradition held every year at my Uncle George's lakeside property, I arrived feeling cautiously optimistic. My parents had been making consistent efforts in therapy. Emma and I were having actual conversations instead of competitions, and I had started to believe that maybe, just maybe, real change was possible, until Aunt Meredith cornered me by the potato salad. "I heard about your little tantrum over Emma borrowing your car," she said, her voice dripping with disapproval. "You always were the difficult one, weren't you? So dramatic over such small things." I nearly choked on my lemonade. Tantrum? She took my car without permission after I explicitly told her no. Aunt Meredith waved her hand dismissively. "That's what sisters do. When my sister needed something of mine, I gave it without question. That's what family means." Before I could respond, my cousin Zoe joined us. "Mom, remember when you called the police because Uncle Frank used your garden shears without asking?" She turned to me with a wink. "She pressed charges for theft." Aunt Meredith's face flushed crimson. "That was completely different." "Was it, though?" Zoe asked innocently. "Because it sounds pretty similar to me." As Aunt Meredith stammered, through an explanation about expensive German craftsmanship and principle, I caught my mother watching from across the yard. She excused herself from her conversation and made her way over. "Everything okay here?" she asked, her eyes moving. Between me and Aunt Meredith. In the past, this would have been my cue to smile politely and pretend everything was fine. The old Olivia would have swallowed her feelings to keep the peace. But I wasn't that person anymore. Aunt Meredith was just telling me how childish I was for not letting Emma take my car without permission, I said calmly. "Apparently, that's what sisters do." My mother's posture stiffened. "Meredith, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" As they walked away, I heard my mother's voice firm and clear. "Olivia was right to stand her ground, and we support her completely. If you have concerns about how our family is changing, you can discuss them with me or Robert, but not with my daughters." I nearly dropped my plate. My mother was defending me, publicly, unequivocally defending me. The sensation was so foreign I didn't know how to process it. Zoe nudged my arm. "About time someone stood up to my mom. She's been the family bulldozer for decades." "Your mom seems to think boundaries don't apply to family," I said. "Yeah, until someone crosses hers." Zoe laughed. "For what it's worth, I think you were completely right about the car. And I'm glad you stood up for yourself. Some of us younger cousins have been watching and taking notes." After the reunion, my father called me. "I wanted to check in," he said awkwardly. "Your mother told me about what happened with Meredith." "It was fine, Dad. Nothing I haven't heard before." "That's the problem," he said, his voice uncharacteristically emotional. "You shouldn't have to hear it at all. I've been thinking a lot about why Emma turned out the way she did. So entitled, so convinced that the world should bend to her. And I keep coming back to the same answer. It's because that's what we taught her." The rawness of his admission left me speechless. We gave her everything, made excuses for her behavior, never held her accountable. We created this problem, and now we're all paying for it, including Emma. He paused. "I'm trying to do better, Olivia, for both my daughters." Our conversations were becoming more honest, more real. But just as things were improving with my immediate family, a different problem emerged. My grandmother's antique watch, the one Emma had borrowed and returned, stopped working suddenly. I took it to a jeweler for repair, expecting a simple fix. "I'm sorry, but this watch has been tampered with," the jeweler told me, examining it under a magnifying glass. Someone replaced some of the internal mechanisms with cheaper parts. The original craftsmanship was exceptional, but these replacements— He shook his head. They're what caused the damage. My stomach nodded. Is it fixable? Yes, but it won't be cheap. And it won't be fully original anymore. I left the shop with the watch in my purse and a $700 repair estimate in my hand. In a daze, I drove to Tyler's apartment, unable to process what had happened alone. As I explained the situation, his expression darkened. She sold the original. Parts, he said quietly. That's why she gave it back so easily. She'd already taken what was valuable. The truth of his words hit me like a physical blow. The watch had been worth far more than sentimental value. Its antique Swiss movement alone was worth thousands. Emma, with her background in luxury real estate, would have known that. I called Julia immediately, my hands shaking with a mixture of grief and rage. She didn't just damage my inheritance, I said. She partially stole it. Julia was characteristically level-headed. Do you want to pursue this legally? Because we can. This is straightforward theft. Did I want to press charges against my own sister? The sister who had supposedly been working on herself, who had apologized, however imperfectly, and was participating in family therapy. The thought made me physically ill, but so did the knowledge that she had quite literally stolen a piece of my grandmother's legacy from me. I need to talk to her first, I decided, face to face. Julia advised caution. Having a witness present might be wise. I asked my mother to join us, a neutral location, the community center where we'd been having family therapy. My mother looked worn, older than her years as she sat in the waiting room. I don't know what this is about, she said. But Emma's been anxious all day. When Emma arrived, she was already defensive. What's this big emergency meeting about? Some of us have actual work to do, you know. I placed the watch and the jeweler's estimate on the table between us. I had the watch. Examined, I said simply. The jeweler found that someone had removed the original parts and replaced them with cheap imitations. That's why it stopped working. Emma's face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, guilt, defensiveness, finally settling on indignation. And naturally, you assume I did it? Typical Olivia, always thinking the worst of me. My mother picked up the watch, her hands trembling slightly. Emma, did you do this? Of course not. But her eyes wouldn't meet either of ours. The jeweler documented everything, I continued. The replaced parts, the damage it caused. He even took photos that showed tool marks from amateur removal. The original parts would be worth thousands, Emma. Emma's composure cracked. It was just sitting in your jewelry box. You never even wore it until Grandma died. I had bills to pay, Nathan's business was failing, and you've always had it so. Easy? I interrupted, my voice rising despite my efforts to stay calm. Which part has been easy for me, Emma? Being constantly compared to you and found lacking? Working 2 jobs to put myself through college while you got a free ride? Or maybe watching. You take my car, my clothes, my heirlooms whenever you wanted because family shares everything? My mother's face had gone ashen. Emma, she whispered, tell me you didn't sell parts of your grandmother's watch. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, not the manipulative displays I'd seen so often. I needed the money, she said. And I was angry at Olivia for throwing me out of her apartment. It seemed fair somehow. Fair? My mother's voice had an edge I'd never heard before. Your sister has shown you nothing but kindness her entire life, and this is how you repay her? By stealing from her? Emma looked genuinely shocked at our mother's reaction. In her world, she'd always been the favorite, the one whose actions were justified and excused. I was going to pay her back eventually, she muttered, once things turned around with the business. When? I asked. When exactly were you planning? To tell me, let alone pay me back? after the watch stopped working completely? After I'd spent hundreds trying to fix what you broke? Emma had no answer. My mother stood up, her movements stiff. Emma, you need to make this right. Not eventually. Now? How? I don't have that kind of money. Then you'll set up a payment plan, my mother said firmly. And you'll start by apologizing to your sister. A real apology, not excuses. Emma looked between us, seemingly unable to process that she wasn't going to be rescued from the consequences of her actions this time. Are you seriously taking her side? She asked our mother. After everything. This isn't about sides, my mother said. This is about right and wrong. What you did was wrong, Emma. Deeply wrong. That night, my father called. He'd heard everything from my mother. I've arranged to pay for the watch repair, he said without preamble. And I'll be transferring funds to your account tomorrow to cover the full value of what was taken. Dad, you don't have to do that. This is between Emma and me. No, he said firmly. It's between all of us. Your mother and I enabled Emma's behavior for years. We're partly responsible for the person she became, so we're going to help fix what she broke, both the watch and her relationship with you, if that's still possible. 2 days later, Emma showed up at my apartment. No warning text, no call ahead. Just Emma, standing in my hallway, looking more subdued than I'd ever seen her. I'm sorry, she said before I could speak. Not an excuse sorry or a because Mom made me sorry, a real sorry. What I did was wrong. All of it. The watch, the car, the clothes, the way I've treated you our whole lives. I've been horrible to you, and you never deserved it. I stood in the doorway, not inviting her in, but not sending her away either. Why? I asked. Why me? Why take my things when you always had more than I did anyway? She leaned against the wall, suddenly looking exhausted. Because you were always so content, with less with what you had. I always needed more attention, more stuff, more validation. And nothing was ever enough. She met my eyes directly. I was jealous of you, Olivia. Not the other way around. The confession hung between us, reshaping how I understood our entire relationship. That makes no sense, I finally said. You were the favorite, the pretty one, the successful one. Everyone always preferred you. They preferred the performance, she corrected. The show I put on. You gotta be real. I never felt like I could be. She handed me an envelope. It's a promissory note. I'm selling my car to pay Dad back and to start paying you for the watch. It's not enough, I know that, but it's what I can do right now. I took the envelope, but didn't open it. I don't know if I can forgive you yet, Emma. I understand. She turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I always admired how you knew exactly who you were. I'm only just starting to figure that out for myself. After she left, I opened the envelope. Inside was not only the promissory note, but also a handwritten letter detailing every item she'd taken from me over the years, from childhood toys to adult possessions, with a plan to replace or reimburse me for each one. It wasn't about the money or the stuff. It was the acknowledgement that mattered. For the first time, she was seeing me and what she had done to me. The following weeks brought more changes. Emma moved out of her expensive house into a modest apartment. Nathan, it turned out, had already filed for divorce, unable to weather the financial strain and Emma's increasingly erratic behavior. My parents sold their vacation property to help Emma pay her debts, not just to me, but to several creditors she'd been hiding from everyone. I never realized how deep she was in, my father confessed during one of our now regular coffee meetings. Or how long she'd been using shopping to cope with her unhappiness. The spending, the taking things that weren't hers, it was all part of the same problem. Emma, it seemed, had been drowning for years while presenting an image of perfect success. Her stealing from me hadn't been just about getting things she wanted. It had been a compulsion, a way of filling a void that never stayed filled. Understanding didn't erase the hurt, but it helped me contextualize it. What had happened wasn't just about me or even about Emma's feelings toward me. It was about deeper patterns, family dynamics, and untreated issues that had festered for years. One rainy Tuesday, 3 months after the watch incident, I met Julia for our now regular lunch. She'd become more than my lawyer. She was a friend, a mentor, someone who understood boundaries in a way my family was only beginning to grasp. "How are things with the Morgan clan?" she asked as we settled into our usual booth at the cafe. "Complicated," I admitted. "Emma's in therapy, individual therapy, not just the family sessions. Dad says she's been diagnosed with some kind of compulsive spending disorder along with depression. Apparently, it explains a lot of her behavior over the years." "And how do you feel about that?" I pushed my salad around with my fork, considering. Conflicted. On one hand, I'm glad she's getting help. On the other, it's hard not to feel like it's just another excuse, Another reason why Emma gets special. Treatment and understanding. Julia nodded. It's possible for both things to be true. She can have legitimate issues that need treatment and have hurt you in ways that aren't automatically erased by a diagnosis. Exactly, I said, relieved that someone understood. Everyone's so focused on helping Emma now, which is good, but sometimes I feel like my hurt just gets. I searched for the word. Minimized? Julia suggested. Yes. Like now that we know why she did these things, I'm supposed to just forgive and forget. Julia set down her coffee cup with purpose. Olivia, you get to decide what your relationship with your sister looks like going forward. Not your parents, not Emma, not some idealized version of family that's pushed on you. You. If you need more time, take it. If you want distance, create it. Your healing matters too. That conversation was a turning point for me. I realized I'd been waiting for permission to prioritize my own well-being, my own healing. Julia had given me that permission, but more importantly, she'd reminded me that I had the power to give it to myself. The next day, I wrote a letter to my family. Not an accusatory manifesto or a list of grievances, but a clear statement of my needs going forward. I want to be part of this family, but on terms that respect my autonomy and boundaries. I need acknowledgement of the hurt I've experienced, not just explanations for why it happened. I need time and space to heal in my own way, at my own pace. And I need all of you to understand that family isn't a magic word that erases the need for consent, respect, and healthy boundaries. I sent copies to my parents, to Emma, even to Aunt Meredith and a few other relatives who'd been part of the unhealthy dynamic. Some responded with understanding, others with defensiveness. But for the first time, I wasn't measuring the success of my communication by how they received it. I was measuring it by how honestly I had expressed my truth. Tyler was there through all of it, a steady presence who never tried to fix things or tell me how to feel. Our relationship deepened as I learned to bring my whole self to it, not just the agreeable, peacekeeping Olivia of the past, but the complex, sometimes angry, always authentic woman I was becoming. "I love how you stand up for yourself now," he told me one evening as we walked through Evergreen Park. "Not just with your family, but at work, with friends, even with me." It was true. The boundaries I'd fought so hard to establish with my family were spreading to other areas of my life. I was saying no more often, asking for what I needed, negotiating terms that worked for me rather than automatically accommodating everyone else. And surprisingly, most people respected it. A few drifted away, uncomfortable with the new Olivia who wouldn't bend to keep them comfortable. But the relationships that remained grew stronger, more honest, more equal. 6 months after the watch incident, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. It was the jeweler who had examined my grandmother's watch. "Ms. Morgan, I wanted to let you know that someone came in today with what I believe are the original parts from your antique watch. They asked me to contact you." My hand tightened around the phone. "Who was it?" "A gentleman named Nathan Peterson. He said you'd know who he was. Emma's ex-husband. The divorce had been finalized just weeks earlier. When I arrived at the jewelry shop, Nathan was waiting outside. We'd never been close. He'd always seemed to share Emma's view of me as somehow less than, not worth much attention. But today, he looked different. Humbled, perhaps. I found these when I was packing. The last of our things," he explained, handing me a small velvet pouch. "Emma sold them to a watch collector we met through one of our real estate clients. I tracked him down and bought them back." He shrugged awkwardly. Seemed like the right thing to do. "Nathan, Thank you. But why? After everything that happened with you and Emma?" "Because what she did was wrong," he said simply. "And because I wasn't much better, looking the other way when she took things that weren't hers, spent money we didn't have. I enabled her for a long time. This is me trying to make at least one thing right." Inside the velvet pouch were the original mechanisms from my grandmother's watch. Tiny, intricate pieces of history and craftsmanship that I'd thought were lost forever. The jeweler was able to restore the watch to its original condition. When he handed it back to me, ticking away as it had for decades before my grandmother owned it, something in me healed a little too. Not because the material object mattered so much, but because its restoration represented something larger, the possibility that broken things could be made whole again. Different, marked by their history, but whole. I invited Emma to coffee the following week. Just the two of us. No parents or mediators. When I showed her the restored watch, her eyes filled with tears. "Nathan?" she guessed. I nodded. "He found the parts and bought them back." "He's a better person than I gave him credit for," she said softly. "Better than I was to him." She looked up at me. "I'm trying, Olivia. I really am. The therapy, the financial counseling, the medication, it's all helping. I'm starting to understand why I did the things I did. But understanding isn't the same as excusing." "No," I agreed. "It isn't. I don't expect you to forgive me. Not yet, maybe not ever fully. But I want you to know that I see you now. Really see you. And I'm proud of who you are, who you've always been." It wasn't a fairy tale ending. Emma and I didn't magically become best friends. My parents didn't transform overnight into perfectly balanced, emotionally intelligent people. I still kept my car keys close and my boundaries closer. But something fundamental had shifted. The family narrative was being rewritten, not just by me standing up for myself, but by all of us choosing a different way forward. My voice mattered now. My feelings were valid. My boundaries were, mostly, respected. 1 year after the day my car disappeared from the parking lot, I found myself in a position I never could have imagined. My promotion at Blackwell had come, with not just a better title and salary, but also the opportunity to lead our newest marketing campaign for a major client. The project required all my focus and creativity, which is why I was spending a Saturday afternoon in my apartment surrounded by concept boards and half-empty coffee cups. The knock at my door came just as I was finally finding my rhythm with a particularly challenging section of the campaign strategy. I opened it to find Emma standing there, a hesitant smile on her face and a large bag in her hands. "I know you're busy with the big project," she said. "Tyler mentioned you've been working weekends. I thought you might need some actual food." She held up the bag. "I made that pasta salad you liked when we were kids, with the sun-dried tomatoes and pine nuts." I raised an eyebrow. "You cooked?" "Well, I followed a recipe which is practically the same thing." She shrugged self-consciously. "I've been taking classes. Turns out when you're not spending all your money on designer clothes and trying to maintain a certain image, you have time for actual hobbies. I hesitated for just a moment before stepping aside to let her in. Our relationship was still a work in progress, more fragile than robust, but the effort she'd been making over the past months was undeniable. The Emma who stood in my doorway now was almost unrecognizable from the entitled, manipulative sister I'd grown up with. She surveyed the chaos of my living room with a smile. Looks like a creative tornado hit? Something like that. The client keeps changing the parameters, and I'm trying to stay one step ahead. I cleared a space on the coffee table for the food. Thanks for this. I actually haven't eaten anything but cereal since yesterday. As I grabbed plates from the kitchen, I noticed Emma carefully examining my concept boards without touching them. The old Emma would have immediately started rearranging things, offering unsolicited advice, making me feel like my work wasn't quite good enough. This Emma observed respectfully, maintaining the boundary between my work and her opinions. "This looks amazing," she said when I returned. "The color palette especially, it's sophisticated but accessible." "Thanks." I served the pasta salad, surprised to find it was actually delicious. "This is really good, Em. Don't sound so shocked." She laughed. "I've discovered I'm actually pretty decent at following directions when I bother to read them." We ate in a companionable silence that would have been unimaginable a year ago. When she finished, Emma collected both our plates and took them to the kitchen without being asked. I heard the water running as she washed them. "You don't have to do that," I called. "I know. I want to." She returned, drying her hands on a kitchen towel. "Listen, there's another reason I stopped by. I wanted to tell you something in person." I tensed slightly, conditioned by years of experience to expect some kind of drama or crisis whenever Emma wanted to tell me something. She noticed my reaction and smiled sadly. "Not bad news, I promise. Actually, it's good. At least, I think it is." She took a deep breath. "I got a job offer, a real one, with benefits and everything." "Emma, that's great. Where?" "Riverdale. Community college. I'll be teaching an introductory real estate course, just part-time to start. It turns out all those years in the business actually gave me knowledge worth sharing." "That's perfect for you," I said, genuinely pleased. Emma had always excelled at holding court, commanding attention. Teaching would channel those traits positively. "The thing is," she continued, "I'd need to move closer to the campus. It's on the other side of town from my apartment." She twisted her hands together nervously. "I found a place that would be perfect, but the security deposit is due Monday, and my first paycheck from the college won't come through until next month." And there it was, the request for money, the real reason for the visit, the pasta salad as a prelude to asking for a loan. I felt my walls go up immediately, disappointed but not surprised. Emma must have read my expression because she quickly added, "I'm not asking you for money. I would never do that, not after everything. I just wanted to tell you that I'll be getting a loan from the bank. Mom offered to help, but I turned her down. I want to do this on my own." I blinked, caught off guard. "Oh. Yeah, oh." She smiled wryly. "I'm trying this new thing where I solve my own problems instead of expecting other people to fix them for me. Novel concept, right?" "Very novel," I agreed, relaxing again. "Why tell me about it then?" Emma's expression turned serious. "Because I wanted you to know I'm committed to changing, really changing, not just saying the right things until the pressure's off. I want you to be proud of me, Olivia. I want to be proud of myself." Something shifted inside me at her words, a loosening of a knot I'd carried for so long I'd forgotten. It was there. This was an Emma I'd never known, one who cared about earning pride rather than demanding admiration, who solved problems rather than creating them for others. "I am proud of you," I said quietly. "This past year hasn't been easy. for any of us, but especially not for you. Facing your issues, making amends, starting over, that takes real courage. She ducked her head, looking embarrassed but pleased. Thanks. That means a lot coming from you. After Emma left, I returned to my work with a lighter heart. The cynical part of me, the part that had been burned too many times, kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. Surely this new, improved Emma was just a temporary phase. Surely she'd revert to type eventually. But as weeks turned into months, the evidence suggested otherwise. Emma not only started her teaching position but excelled at it. Students posted, glowing reviews online. The department chair asked her to develop additional courses. She lived within her means in a modest apartment, drove a used car, and even started a small emergency savings account. Most importantly, she respected my boundaries. Consistently, no more borrowing my possessions, no more showing up unannounced except for the occasional food delivery when she knew I was working late, no more manipulation or guilt trips when I couldn't attend a family event. Meanwhile, my career continued, its upward trajectory. The marketing campaign I'd led was a tremendous success, earning Blackwell a prestigious industry award and me a substantial bonus. Tyler and I moved in together, combining our book collections and arguing good-naturedly about whose coffee maker was superior. His won. We adopted a cat from the shelter, a dignified orange tabby with one eye who preferred sitting on keyboards to any proper cat bed. Life was good, better than I'd ever imagined it could be. The only shadow was my lingering wariness around Emma and, to a lesser extent, my parents. I wanted to trust this new family dynamic, to believe the changes were permanent. But years of conditioning had taught me that vulnerability led to exploitation. Julia, who had remained both my lawyer and my friend, noticed my hesitation during one of our monthly lunches. "You're waiting for them to disappoint you again," she observed. "Especially Emma." I stirred my coffee, avoiding her eyes. "Is that so unreasonable, given the history?" "Not unreasonable at all," Julia replied, "but potentially limiting. There's a difference between healthy caution and preemptive withdrawal. One protects you, the other isolates you." "So what are you suggesting? That I pretend the past never happened? That I trust them completely?" Julia shook her head. "Of course not. Trust is earned over time through consistent behavior. What I'm suggesting is that you remain open to the possibility that people can genuinely change, including your sister. Keep your boundaries, absolutely, but perhaps loosen your grip on the narrative that says she'll inevitably betray you again." Her words stayed with me in the following days, prompting me to examine my own behavior more critically. Had I been fair in my assessment of Emma's changes? Had I acknowledged her growth adequately, or was I still viewing her through the lens of our troubled past? An opportunity to test this came sooner than expected. My grandmother's birthday was approaching, the first since her watch had been restored to its original condition. I had planned to spend the day quietly, perhaps visiting her grave with flowers, honoring the woman who had been the only one to truly see me during my childhood. To my surprise, Emma called with a suggestion. "I know Grandma's birthday is next." "Weekend," she said tentatively. I was thinking, what if we visited her together? Unless you'd rather go alone, which I completely understand. My immediate instinct was to refuse. Grandma's birthday had always been my private ritual, my time to connect with the one family member who had valued me unconditionally. Sharing it with Emma felt like diluting something precious. But then I remembered Julia's advice about remaining open to possibilities, about not clinging too tightly to old narratives. "Actually," I heard myself say, "that might be nice." We met at the cemetery the following Saturday, each carrying a bouquet of daisies, Grandma's favorite. The early autumn air was crisp, leaves just beginning to turn golden at their edges. Emma looked nervous, her usual confidence muted as we walked together between the rows of headstones. "I haven't been here since the funeral," she admitted. I told myself it was because I was too busy, but really I think I was ashamed. She would have been so disappointed in what I did with her watch, in how I treated you. I didn't contradict her. It was true. Our grandmother had no patience for cruelty or dishonesty. She loved you anyway, I said instead. That was her gift. Loving us exactly as we were, flaws and all, while still expecting us to be our best selves. Emma nodded, blinking back tears. I miss her. I miss who I was when I was with her, the better version of myself. We reached the simple granite headstone that marked our grandmother's resting place. Together, we arranged the daisies in the built-in vase and stood in silence for a few moments. I have something for you, Emma said eventually, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a small wrapped package. It's not to replace what I took, or to erase what I did. It's just something I thought you should have. Curious, I unwrapped the package to find a leather-bound notebook. Opening it, I recognized our grandmother's handwriting immediately. Pages and pages of it, filled with recipes, household tips, and occasional reflections on life. Her journal, I breathed. Where did you find this? In Mom and Dad's attic, when I was helping them clean out last month. It was in a box with some of her other things. Emma shifted uncomfortably. I know Mom gave me most of Grandma's things after she died, which wasn't fair. This should have been yours all along. I ran my fingers over the familiar handwriting, feeling closer to our grandmother than I had since her passing. Thank you for giving this to me. There's something specific I wanted you to see, Emma said. Page 43. I turned to the indicated page and found an entry dated from when I would have been about 12 years old. Olivia came to visit today, full of questions about the garden. Such a thoughtful child, so observant of the world around her. She notices what others miss, the pattern of the leaves, the small acts of kindness, the hurt hidden behind smiles. Emma shines so brightly that sometimes I fear Olivia's steadier light goes unseen, but those who look carefully will discover that it's Olivia's warmth that sustains, Olivia's strength that endures. My quiet granddaughter will surprise them all, someday. Tears filled my eyes as I read the words, evidence that someone had truly seen me when I'd felt invisible for so long. She knew, Emma said softly. All those years, while everyone else was focused on me, she saw your value. She saw who you would become. I closed the journal carefully, holding it against my chest. Why show me this now? Emma looked directly at me, her expression open and vulnerable in a way I'd rarely seen. Because I want you to know that I see you now too. Not just what you can do for me, not just as a comparison to make myself feel better. I see you, Olivia, the real you, and I'm so sorry it took me so long. Standing there in the quiet cemetery, with the physical reminder of our grandmother between us, I felt something fundamental shift. Not a complete healing of all past wounds, that would take more time, but a genuine step toward a new kind of relationship with my sister. One based on mutual respect rather than competition, on seeing each other clearly rather than through the distorted lens of old family dynamics. It means a lot that you found this, I said finally, that you recognized its importance and gave it to me instead of keeping it. The old Emma would have kept it, she acknowledged. Probably wouldn't have even read it, just stored it away because it was mine by default. And the new Emma? She smiled, a genuine smile without the edge of calculation I'd grown up watching. The new Emma is trying to give things back rather than take them, including your trust, if you'll let me earn it again. As we walked back to our cars, Emma surprised me once more. I've been thinking about Grandma's watch, she said. Not about what I did, I've thought about that plenty, but about why she left it specifically to you. Because I was always worried about being late, I joked, deflecting slightly. The watch remained a sensitive topic between us. No, I think it was more than that. Time is precious, right? And Grandma trusted you with something precious because she knew you'd value it properly. Emma stopped walking, turning to face me directly. I didn't value you properly, Olivia. I took you for granted, assumed you'd always be there to take my crap, to forgive me, to make sacrifices for me. I wasted so much time treating you as less than, when really, you were always the one with the most integrity, the most heart. Her words hung in the air between us, honest and raw. I didn't know how to respond at first, overwhelmed by the acknowledgement I'd craved for so long. We can't get back the time we lost, I said finally. But maybe we can use the time we have now better. Emma nodded, her eyes bright with unshed tears. I'd like that, very much. That evening, as I showed Tyler the journal and told him about the day with Emma, he watched me with a thoughtful expression. You seem different, he observed. Lighter somehow. Do I? I considered his words. I guess I am. For so long I've been braced for another betrayal, another disappointment. It's exhausting, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And now? I ran my fingers over the leather cover of my grandmother's journal. Now I'm trying to be open to the possibility that people can change, really change, not just temporarily or superficially. Tyler smiled, pulling me close. That sounds like progress for both of you. The true test of Emma's transformation came unexpectedly a few weeks later. My car, the same blue Honda Civic that had been at the center of so much conflict, finally gave up for good. The mechanic delivered the grim news. The repair costs would exceed the car's value significantly. Time for a new one, Tyler said practically. You've gotten your money's worth out of this one. I nodded, already calculating what I could afford. My savings had grown substantially since the promotion, but I was also putting aside money for a potential down payment on a condo. A new car would delay that goal by several months. When Emma heard about my car troubles, she called immediately. I'm so sorry about your Honda. I know how much that car meant to you. It was just a car, I said, though we both knew it had. Represented much more. My independence, my achievement, my boundary line. Listen, Emma said hesitantly. I've been saving some money from the teaching job, and I've been doing some private real estate consulting on the side. I want to help with the new car. I felt my defenses rise instinctively. Emma, I don't need... It's not a gift, she interrupted. It's not me trying to control you or create an obligation. Think of it as the final installment in my restitution plan. I know the car meant more to you than just transportation, and I played a role in its decline with the unauthorized borrowing. I couldn't help but smile at her delicate phrasing. You mean when you stole it? Yes, that, she admitted. Please, Olivia, let me do this one thing to help make things right. After discussing it with Tyler and Julia, I agreed to let Emma contribute a specific amount toward the down payment on my new car. Not enough to create an uncomfortable sense of obligation, but enough to acknowledge her sincere desire to make amends. We drew up a simple agreement, Julia's idea, that specified the money was a gift with no expectation of repayment or reciprocal favor. The day I picked up my new car, a slightly more upscale model than I would have chosen on my own, but still practical and fuel efficient, Emma came along. As the dealer handed over the keys, she looked as proud as if she'd bought the car herself. It suits you, she said as I adjusted the mirrors. Practical, but with a touch of well-deserved luxury. I still feel a little guilty spending this much, I confessed. Emma shook her head. That's the old Olivia talking. The one who was taught that her needs and wants were less important than everyone else's. The one who apologized for taking up space. She touched my arm lightly. You've earned this, sis. Not just the car, but the right to enjoy good things without guilt. As I drove us to a celebratory lunch, Emma fiddled with the radio, finding a station we both enjoyed. The familiar dynamic of older sister taking charge would have irritated me once, but now it felt different, less intrusive, more companionable. "You know what I realized recently?" Emma said as we waited at a stoplight. "We never really knew each other as adults, as people separate from our family roles. I had this fixed idea of who you were based on our childhood, and I never bothered to update it." I glanced at her. "And now?" "Now I think you might be my favorite person," she said simply. "You're certainly the one I respect most." The light turned green, and I accelerated smoothly, feeling the responsive power of the new engine. As we drove through Riverdale, past the landmarks of our shared history, our parents' house, the community center, the park where we'd just visited our grandmother's journal, I realized something profound. The journey from victim to advocate, from doormat to dignified boundary setter, wasn't a straight line. It had loops and spirals, moments of progress followed by setbacks, victories, tinged with grief over what had been lost. But each step, however small or faltering, had led me here. To a place where I could drive my own car down my own road, making my own choices, surrounded by people who finally saw me clearly, including, miraculously, my sister. Family shares. Everything, my mother had said when my car disappeared that fateful day. She hadn't been entirely wrong, just incomplete. Family does share. Values, history, connection. But what makes sharing meaningful is that it's freely given, not taken by force or manipulation. It's offered with respect for boundaries and acknowledgement of individual worth. Emma and I would never have a perfect relationship. Too much water had flowed under that bridge. But as we drove toward lunch, laughing about some ridiculous story she was telling from her teaching experiences, I realized we had something potentially more valuable than perfection. We had authenticity. We were, at long last, becoming true sisters, imperfect, occasionally annoying, but genuinely caring and respectful of each other's separate journeys. And that, I decided as I parked the new car and we walked together into the restaurant, was worth all the difficult conversations, all the painful confrontations, all the tears and anger and grief of the past year. Because family doesn't just share things. At its best, family shares growth, shares healing, shares the difficult but necessary work of becoming better people together. As Emma held the door open for me, she smiled, not her old calculated smile designed to charm and disarm, but something softer, more genuine. "After you, sis," she said. And I walked through, into whatever came next, carrying my boundaries and my newfound strength with me. 2 years after the day my car disappeared, I found myself standing in front of the full-length mirror in a small bridal shop downtown, barely recognizing my reflection. The elegant woman staring back at me wore a simple ivory sheath dress, understated, but undeniably bridal. My hair was swept up in a casual updo, a few tendrils framing my face. Around my wrist, my grandmother's watch glinted in the soft boutique lighting. "Oh, Olivia." My mother's voice broke as she stepped into view behind me. "You look absolutely beautiful." I met her eyes in the mirror, seeing genuine emotion there. This was still sometimes surprising to me. These moments of pure maternal love without the comparing, without the subtle favoritism that had colored my childhood. We'd worked hard to get here, all of us. "Do you think Tyler will like it?" I asked, smoothing the silk over my hips. "He won't be able to take his eyes off you," she assured me. "Though I suspect he'd feel the same if you got married in jeans and a t-shirt." I laughed. That was actually my first suggestion, but he insisted on proper wedding attire. The boutique door chimed, and Emma rushed in, apologizing breathlessly. "Sorry I'm late. Parent-teacher conferences ran over, and then traffic was a nightmare." She stopped short when she saw me. "Oh my God, Liv, that's the one. That is absolutely the one." I turned slowly, taking in my sister's genuine reaction. There was no hint of the competitive edge that would have been there just a few years ago. No subtle undermining or attempt to center herself. Just pure, supportive joy. "You think?" I asked, unnecessarily smoothing the material again. "I know," Emma said firmly. "It's perfect. Elegant, understated, completely you." She circled me, admiring the dress from all angles. "Tyler is going to lose his mind." The bridal consultant, who had been hovering nearby, smiled. "Should we consider this a yes to the dress?" I nodded, unable to suppress my smile. "Yes, this is the one." As the consultant helped me out of the sample dress and noted my measurements for ordering, my mother and Emma waited in the sitting area, chatting easily about the upcoming wedding plans. Our small ceremony was scheduled for spring, just 6 months away. Nothing extravagant, a simple gathering at the Botanical Gardens, followed by dinner at our favorite restaurant. Tyler and I had agreed that we wanted something intimate and meaningful rather than showy. "Have you decided about the bridesmaids yet?" the consultant asked casually as she pinned the dress. I hesitated. This was the one wedding detail I'd been avoiding. "Not quite yet," I hedged. The truth was more complicated. Tyler had already asked his brother to be his best man, and conventional wisdom suggested I should ask Emma to be my maid of honor. But something held me back. Not spite or lingering resentment, but a deeper uncertainty about what felt authentic to me. Later, as the three of us had lunch at a nearby cafe, Emma brought up the topic herself. "So, bridesmaid dresses," she said, scrolling through her phone to show me some options she'd found. "I was thinking something in that sage green you like, maybe with—" "Emma," I interrupted gently, "I haven't actually decided about bridesmaids yet." She looked up, surprise flickering across her face before she carefully composed her expression. "Oh, of course. It's completely up to you. No pressure at all." But I could see the hurt she was trying to hide. My mother glanced between us, concern evident in her eyes, but remaining silent. This was our issue to navigate. "It's not what you're thinking," I said quietly. "I'm not excluding you because of the past. It's more complicated than that." Emma set down her phone. "You don't owe me an explanation, Olivia. It's your wedding. You should have exactly what you want." Her mature response only made me feel worse. The old Emma would have made a scene, would have guilt-tripped me, would have made it about her feelings. This Emma, the one who had worked so hard to change, deserved better from me. "Actually, I think I do owe you an explanation," I said. "Can we talk about this later? Just the two of us?" She nodded, and we returned to safer topics, the menu options, the photographer Tyler's cousin had recommended, whether Dad would actually follow through on his threat to wear his lucky fishing hat to the ceremony. "Absolutely not," our mother declared. "I'll burn that disgusting thing first." That evening, I invited Emma over to my apartment while Tyler was out with friends. We sat on the balcony with glasses of wine, the autumn air cool, but not uncomfortable. For a moment, we were silent, watching the lights of Riverdale shimmer in the distance. "I'm not sure how to say this," I began awkwardly. "But the reason I haven't asked you to be my maid of honor isn't about punishment or the past. It's about figuring out what's real and what's obligation." Emma took a sip of her wine, waiting for me to continue. "For so long, our relationship was defined by what was expected, the roles we were supposed to play as sisters. I was supposed to admire you, support you, defer to you. You were supposed to look out for me, guide me, protect me. But we never did any of that authentically. It was all performative, all for our parents' benefit, or to fit some ideal of what sisters should be." I paused, trying to find the right words. These past 2 years, we've finally started building a real relationship. Something genuine that isn't based on obligation or family expectations. And it matters to me so much that we keep building on that foundation of authenticity. I think I understand, Emma said slowly. You're worried that asking me to be your maid of honor would be falling back into old patterns, doing what's expected rather than what's real. Exactly, I said, relieved that she grasped what I was trying to say. I need to know that whatever role you play in my wedding, it's because we both genuinely want it, not because it's what sisters are supposed to do. Emma was quiet for a long moment, considering. Can I tell you something without you taking it the wrong way? I nodded, bracing myself. I don't actually care about being your maid of honor. I blinked, caught off guard. She laughed at my expression. That came out wrong. What I mean is, the title doesn't matter to me. I don't need to stand next to you in a special dress or give a speech or any of that traditional stuff, but I do want to be there for you in whatever way feels right and real. If that means just being a guest who happens to be your sister, that's fine. If it means helping you get ready that morning, great. If it means keeping Dad's fishing hat hostage until after the ceremony, consider it done. Relief washed over me. You really mean that? Absolutely. Look, Olivia, I spent most of my life caring way too much about appearances and status and having the right role. I'm done with that. What matters now is that your wedding day feels authentic to you and Tyler. Full stop. I felt a knot in my chest loosen. Thank you for understanding. Besides, she added with a grin, who's to say what sisters are supposed to do anyway? We get to define that for ourselves now. We spent the rest of the evening talking through possibilities, ways Emma could participate that would feel meaningful to both of us without triggering old patterns. By the time she left, we'd settled on a plan that felt right. No formal bridal party at all, but Emma would help me get ready on the morning of the wedding, and my grandmother's journal would have a special place in the ceremony, with Emma reading a selected passage. As I closed the door behind her, I felt a profound sense of peace. For perhaps the first time in my life, I was making choices based solely on what felt authentic to me, not what was expected or what would keep the peace. The weeks leading up to the wedding were surprisingly calm. Tyler and I had deliberately kept things simple, focusing on what mattered most to us rather than getting caught up in the wedding industrial complex. We wrote our own vows, chose music that had meaning for us, and decided against elaborate decorations, trusting the natural beauty of the botanical gardens to provide the perfect backdrop. My parents, to their credit, respected our decisions even when they clearly had different ideas. My father only made one half-hearted attempt to argue for his lucky fishing hat before conceding to my mother's glare. Emma proved invaluable, running. Interference when distant relatives tried to push their opinions or traditions on us. No, Aunt Meredith. Olivia and Tyler do not want to incorporate the Morgan family unity candle ceremony, I overheard her saying firmly on the phone one evening. Yes, I know it's tradition. So was bloodletting for medical purposes, but we've moved past that too. I smiled, appreciating her protective interference. The new dynamic between us continued to evolve in ways that surprised and delighted me. We weren't best friends. Our personalities and interests were still too different for that. But we were allies, supporters, and occasionally even confidants. 1 week before the wedding, my phone rang at an unusually early hour. It was Julia, who had become one of my closest friends since helping me through the car incident. Morning, bride-to-be, she said when I answered. Are you sitting down? Should I be? I asked, immediately concerned. Probably. I just got a very interesting email from your sister. My stomach dropped. What did she do? Nothing bad, Julia assured me quickly. Actually, something pretty remarkable. She's established a trust fund. A what now? I sat on the edge of my bed, confused. A small but legally binding trust fund dedicated to your future children's education. She's been putting aside money from her teaching job for nearly a year, apparently. I was speechless. She asked me to review the legal structure and then tell you about it as a pre-wedding gift, Julia continued. The trust is ironclad. The money can only be used for educational purposes for your future children. Or if you don't have children, it can be donated to the scholarship fund you established. I don't understand, I said finally. Why would she do this? Her letter explained it as breaking the cycle of inequality. She said something about wanting any future nieces or nephews to start with solid footing from both their aunt and their parents. She was quite adamant that this not be seen as charity or overstepping, but as a concrete commitment to a new family pattern. Tears filled my eyes as the significance sank in. Emma wasn't just talking about change or temporarily modifying her behavior. She was structuring her resources to ensure that the destructive patterns of our childhood wouldn't be repeated in the next generation. "Are you still there?" Julia asked after my prolonged silence. "Yes, just processing. This is so unexpected." "It's a grand gesture, certainly," Julia acknowledged. "But from what I've seen of Emma's transformation these past 2 years, it feels consistent with who she's becoming." After hanging up, I sat motionless for several minutes, allowing the emotions to wash over me. The Emma I'd grown up with would never have voluntarily shared resources, would never have considered how her actions might impact children not yet born, would never have put someone else's needs above her own desires. This Emma, the one who had faced her demons, done the hard work of therapy, made concrete amends, and continued growing, was someone I couldn't have imagined existing just a few years ago. Tyler found me still sitting there, tears streaking my face. "What's wrong?" he asked, immediately concerned. When I explained, he sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Wow, that's incredible. I don't know how to respond, I admitted. "It's not even about the money, it's about what it represents." "It represents her commitment to being different," Tyler said, "to actively creating a better future rather than just apologizing for the past." I nodded, leaning into his solid presence. "Exactly. So how do you want to respond?" I considered the question carefully. I want to accept it in the spirit it's offered. Not with suspicion or over-analysis, but with gratitude and recognition of what it means for both of us, for our whole family. I called Emma later that day and asked if she could meet me at Morning Brew Cafe, our usual spot for important conversations. When she arrived, looking nervous, I simply hugged her, holding her tightly for several seconds. "Julia told you?" she asked when we separated. "She did. Emma, I don't even know what to say." She fidgeted with her coffee cup. "You don't have to say anything." I didn't do it for thanks or recognition. I did it because it felt like the right thing, the necessary thing, to continue healing our family pattern. "I know," I said softly. "That's what makes it so meaningful." "So you're not upset? You don't think I overstepped?" I shook my head. "Not at all. I think you've given any future children we might have an incredible gift, not just financially, but symbolically. You're helping ensure they'll grow up in a family where equality and respect are built into the foundation." Relief washed over her face. "That's exactly what I hoped. I've been thinking a lot about how differently things might have turned out. If our parents hadn't created that competitive dynamic between us, if they'd treated us equally, if they'd respected our individuality from the beginning. We can't change the past," I reminded her, "but we're certainly reshaping the future." "That's it, exactly." She smiled, her expression lighter now that she knew I understood her intentions. "Speaking of the future, are you nervous about the wedding? Getting cold feet at all?" I laughed. "Not even slightly. Marrying Tyler is the easiest decision I've ever made." "You two are good together," she said sincerely. "He sees you, really sees you, and he makes sure everyone else does too." Her observation was astute. Tyler had been the first person outside my grandmother to truly see me as I was, not as a reflection of or comparison to someone else. His consistent support had given me the courage to stand up for myself, to set boundaries, to expect better treatment from my family. "What about you?" I asked. "Anyone special on the horizon?" Emma shook her head. "I'm deliberately staying single for now. My therapist thinks, and I agree, that I need more time to fully establish who I am independently before bringing another person into the mix. I spent too many years defining myself through other people's perceptions. I'm learning how to be comfortable in my own company first." I nodded, impressed by her self-awareness. "That makes a lot of sense. Besides," she added with a laugh, "between teaching, volunteer work, and continuing education courses, I barely have time to do laundry, let alone date." After coffee, we walked through downtown together, window shopping and chatting about wedding details. As we passed a jewelry store, Emma paused, looking at the display thoughtfully. "You know, I never properly replaced your grandmother's watch," she said. "Even though the original parts were restored, I still took something precious from you, if only temporarily." "That's ancient history," I assured her. "The watch works perfectly now. No lasting damage done." "Still," she persisted, "I'd like to give you something for your something new on the wedding day. Would that be okay?" I hesitated, old caution momentarily resurfacing. Gift-giving had often been complicated between us, laden with hidden expectations or subtle one-upmanship. She sensed my hesitation. No strings attached, I promise, just a sister wanting to celebrate her sister's happiness. Put that way, how could I refuse? That would be lovely. We entered the store together, and Emma spoke quietly with the jeweler while I browsed nearby. Whatever she selected was wrapped and boxed before I could see it, which only piqued my curiosity. "You'll get it the morning of the wedding," she said, slipping the small package into her purse. "Something to go with your grandmother's watch." The day before the wedding, my parents hosted a small rehearsal dinner at their home. The guest list was intimate, just immediate family, Julia, and a few of our closest friends. As we gathered, around the table my mother had decorated with candles and spring flowers, I looked at the faces of the people who had shaped my journey. My father, who had acknowledged his role in creating the unhealthy family dynamic and worked to change it. My mother, who had finally learned to see both her daughters clearly and value us equally. Emma, who had transformed herself through honesty, hard work, and genuine remorse. Tyler, whose steady love had never wavered. Julia, whose guidance had helped me find my voice. Friends who had supported me through the difficult times and celebrated the good ones. As glasses were raised in toasts to our upcoming marriage, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. Not just for the love and support surrounding us now, but for the difficult journey that had brought us here. Without the crisis of the stolen car and watch, without the painful confrontations and hard truths that followed, we might never have broken the destructive patterns that had shaped my family for generations. My father tapped his glass for attention. "I'd like to say something," he announced, his voice gruff with emotion. "When Olivia was born, I made all sorts of promises to myself about the kind of father I'd be. Fair, supportive, present. Somewhere along the way, I broke those promises. I got caught up in patterns I didn't even recognize, treating my daughters unequally, creating competition where there should have been only love." He paused, collecting himself. Watching Olivia grow into the strong, principled woman she is today has been my greatest education. She taught me, taught all of us, what real integrity looks like. What it means to stand your ground even when it's hard. What it means to forgive without forgetting. To rebuild without erasing the past. Tears welled in my eyes as he continued. "Tomorrow I'll walk my younger daughter down the aisle, but she'll be leading me, just as she's led this family toward healing. Olivia, I couldn't be prouder of the woman you've become and the family we're becoming because of your courage." There wasn't a dry eye at the table. Emma reached across to squeeze my hand, her own face streaked with tears. Tyler's arm tightened around my shoulders. My mother dabbed at her eyes with her napkin. In that moment, I realized something profound. The most beautiful thing about genuine change is that it ripples outward, touching everyone connected to it. My stand for respect and boundaries hadn't just improved my own life. It had catalyzed healing for my entire family. My parents' marriage had strengthened as they worked through their parenting mistakes. Emma had confronted demons she might otherwise have carried her entire life. Even extended family members were beginning to recognize and question toxic patterns, all from that single moment of clarity in a parking space, staring at the empty spot where my car should have been. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and perfect, sunlight streaming through the windows of the small suite at the Botanical Gardens where I was getting ready. Emma arrived early, armed with coffee and pastries, her hair already styled for the occasion. "Ready for the big day?" she asked, setting down her bags. "More than ready," I said truthfully. "I just want to be married already. All this build-up for a 20-minute ceremony seems a bit much." She laughed. Always the practical one. From her purse, she withdrew the small jewelry box from the store. "Before things get busy, I wanted to give you this." I opened the box to find a delicate bracelet of intertwined silver and gold strands, forming an elegant knot at the center. "It's beautiful," I said, lifting it from the box. "It's called an infinity knot," Emma explained. "The jeweler told me it represents the way our paths continually cross and reconnect, even when they seem to diverge." She took a breath. "I thought it was appropriate for sisters." I turned the bracelet over and noticed a tiny inscription on the inside, stronger at the broken places. "Hemingway," I murmured, recognizing the reference. Emma nodded. "I thought it fit us. We broke apart, but we've come back together stronger at those places. Different, but better." "It's perfect," I said, genuinely moved. "Will you help me?" "Put it on?" She fastened the bracelet on my wrist just below my grandmother's watch. The two pieces complemented each other beautifully, one representing my past, my heritage, the foundation of who I was, the other representing the future, the healed relationships, the new understanding we'd fought so hard to achieve. As I stood before the mirror in my wedding dress, both pieces glinting in the morning light, I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Not because of the dress or the special occasion makeup, but because of the quiet confidence in her eyes, the relaxed set of her shoulders, the genuine smile on her lips. This was who I had always been beneath the doubt and accommodation, beneath the people-pleasing and the fear of rejection. This was the woman my grandmother had seen in me all along, the one Tyler had fallen in love with, the one who had finally emerged when I'd found the courage to stand my ground. "You look absolutely radiant," Emma said, standing behind me. "Grandma would be so proud of you. Of both of us, I think." I turned to face my sister, taking her hands in mine. "Thank you, Emma. Not just for today or for the bracelet, but for doing the hard work of changing. For being brave enough to face your mistakes and make amends. Not everyone could have done that." "Not everyone has a sister worth changing for," she replied simply. A gentle knock at the door announced my father's arrival. It was time. As he entered, his eyes widened at the sight of me in my wedding dress. "My beautiful daughter," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Are you ready?" I glanced once more at my reflection, at the woman who had learned to value herself, to set boundaries, to expect respect. At the silver watch and the infinity knot bracelet, symbols of where I'd come from and where I was going. At my sister and father beside me, transformed by our shared journey. "Yes," I said with certainty. "I'm ready." As we walked toward the garden where Tyler and our guests waited, I thought about the long, winding path that had led me here. How a moment of crisis, a stolen car, a missing watch, had ultimately set me free. How standing up for myself had caused ripples that changed my entire family. How boundaries, once established, had actually brought us closer in the ways that mattered most. "Family shares everything," my mother had said that day. She hadn't been entirely wrong. Families do share. They share history and blood, challenges and triumphs, wounds and healing. But what makes sharing meaningful is consent, is respect, is recognition of each person's autonomy and worth. My father squeezed my arm gently as we approached the floral arch where Tyler waited, his face lighting up at the sight of me. "I love you, Olivia," my father whispered. "Thank you for not giving up on us." "I love you too, Dad," I replied. And I did, not with the desperate need for approval of my childhood, but with the clear-eyed love of a woman who had learned what real family could be. As I joined hands with Tyler, surrounded by people who truly saw and respected me, I felt the final piece of a long journey fall into place. The road hadn't been easy. There had been tears and confrontations, difficult truths, and painful reckonings, but standing here now, I wouldn't change a single step. Sometimes it takes a stolen car to find your way home to yourself. 5 years into my marriage with Tyler, life had settled into a rhythm I once couldn't have imagined possible. Our small, 2-bedroom house in the quieter part of Riverdale had become a true home, not just a place to live, but a sanctuary where I felt completely secure in who I was and what I deserved. The changes in my family dynamics had proven lasting, evolving into relationships characterized by mutual respect and genuine care, rather than the old patterns of inequality and manipulation. On a crisp autumn morning, I sat at our kitchen table, reviewing the final details for the grand opening of my own marketing agency. After years of success at Blackwell, I had taken the leap to establish Morgan Creative, a name I'd chosen deliberately, reclaiming my family name as a source of pride, rather than complicated emotions. Tyler had been supportive from the moment I'd mentioned the possibility, helping me draft business plans and offering to dip into our savings for the initial investment. "You've more than earned this," he'd said when I expressed hesitation about the financial risk. "And you're more than capable of making it succeed." As I checked email on my laptop, a notification popped up, a reminder for my monthly lunch with Emma. Despite our busy schedules, we had maintained this tradition for nearly 3 years now, meeting at different restaurants around town to catch up on each other's lives. Sometimes our parents joined us, but today would be just the two of us. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was my mother, her voice unusually tentative. "Olivia, do you have a minute?" "Of course, Mom. Is everything okay?" "Yes, fine, nothing to worry about." She paused. "Your father and I were going through some old storage boxes in the attic and found something I think belongs to you." "Oh?" I couldn't imagine what it might be. Most of my childhood possessions had been collected years ago when my parents downsized to a smaller home. "It's your acceptance letter to Northwestern, the one from their journalism program." My breath caught. Northwestern, the dream school I'd been forced to turn down because my parents had claimed they couldn't afford it, even though they'd somehow found the money for Emma's equally expensive design school just a year later. It had been my first real lesson in how differently they valued our futures. "I remember," I said carefully. "There's something else with it. A check. It's from your grandmother, dated the week before she passed away. It's made out to you, with Northwestern tuition written in the memo line." The kitchen suddenly felt too warm, the air too thick. "A check?" "For $20,000, my mother confirmed, her voice now clearly shaking. "It would have covered most of your first-year tuition. Olivia, I swear to you, we never saw this before today. It was in an envelope addressed to you, tucked inside a box of your father's old tax records." My mind raced. $20,000. A gift from my grandmother that would have changed the trajectory of my education, my career, perhaps my entire adult life. "The envelope was never opened?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. It was sealed until today. We should have checked more carefully back then. Should have gone through her papers more thoroughly after she passed. I'm so sorry, Olivia. The apology sounded genuine, but a familiar knot formed in my stomach. The old feeling of being overlooked, deprioritized. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that we had all come too far to fall back into those patterns. It was a long time ago, Mom, I said finally. We can't change the past. No, but we can acknowledge it, she replied. Your father and I have been talking. We want to give you that amount, adjusted for inflation, of course, to put toward your new business. Not as a loan, as what should have been yours all along. I was speechless for a moment. Mom, that's not necessary. It is necessary, she interrupted firmly. Olivia, we've worked hard these past years to repair our relationship, to be better parents to both our daughters. But sometimes symbolic gestures aren't enough. Sometimes tangible amends are needed too. After we hung up, I sat motionless at the kitchen table, feelings washing over me in waves. Grief for the opportunity lost. Anger at the oversight that had impacted my life so significantly. Gratitude for my grandmother's attempt to support me, even if it hadn't reached me in time. And surprisingly, appreciation for my parents' willingness to make concrete amends rather than just offering words. By the time I met Emma for lunch, I had processed enough to share the story without breaking down. We sat at a corner table in a new bistro downtown, the lunchtime crowd providing a gentle hum of background noise. So they just found it now? After all these years? Emma asked, her expression a mixture of shock and dismay. Apparently, it was misfiled in Dad's old tax records, I confirmed. They're insisting on giving me the equivalent amount for the business. Emma was quiet for a moment, pushing her salad around with her fork. Are you going to accept it? I'm not sure yet. Part of me thinks it would be appropriate, a way of honoring Grandma's intention. Another part feels like it's reopening an old wound that had finally healed. Either way, you deserve it, Emma said decisively. Whether you take it from them now or funded your business entirely on your own, that success belongs to you. She hesitated, then added, I know I'm partly responsible for the dynamic that led to you being overlooked. I shook my head. We were kids, Emma. The responsibility was with the adults. Kids who grow into adults with patterns they need to break? She countered. She looked at me directly. I've been thinking about this a lot lately, actually. How our childhood shaped us both, but in such different ways. How so? Well, for you, being constantly compared and found wanting created this incredible inner strength. You developed this core of resilience and self-sufficiency that I never had to build. She took a sip of her water. For me, being the favorite was actually its own kind of damage. I never learned limits, never developed internal validation, never had to face consequences. It made me entitled and fragile in ways that took years of therapy to recognize, let alone address. Her insight surprised me. That's remarkably self-aware. Emma smiled wryly. 5 years of therapy will do that for you. Plus, teaching college students. Nothing makes you examine your own entitlement like watching it play out in 19-year-olds who've never heard the word no. We both laughed, and I marveled at how far we'd come. Having this conversation openly, without defensiveness or guilt, just two sisters reflecting on their shared past with newfound perspective. So, what are you going to do about Mom and Dad's offer? Emma asked as our entrees arrived. I considered the question seriously. I think I'm going to accept it, not because I need it, but because it feels like completing a circle. Grandma wanted me to have that opportunity, and in a way, this is honoring her intention, even if it's years later and in a different form. I think that's a good decision, Emma said, and very you. Practical, but also meaningful. After lunch, As we walked back to our cars, Emma mentioned casually, "By the way, I've been offered a tenure-track position at the college, full professor of real estate studies." "Emma, that's incredible." I hugged her spontaneously. "Why didn't you lead with that news?" She shrugged, looking slightly embarrassed. "Old habits, I guess. Didn't want to make it about me or seem like I was competing with your business launch." "That's ridiculous," I said firmly. "Your success doesn't diminish mine. I'm genuinely thrilled for you." And I was. The old jealousy and competition that had characterized our relationship for so long had been replaced by authentic support. We had become what siblings should be: cheerleaders for each other's achievements, confidants during challenges, separate people with distinct paths who nevertheless remained connected by choice, not just obligation. On the day of Morgan Creative's grand opening, my small but powerful team gathered in our newly renovated office space. I had been selective in my hiring, choosing people not just for their skills but for their values, their commitment to ethical marketing, their respect for boundaries, their ability to collaborate without competitiveness. My experiences had taught me the importance of creating a work environment built on mutual respect and clear expectations. The office buzzed with excitement as we prepared for the evening's reception. Julia, now my company's legal counsel in addition to being one of my closest friends, arrived early to help with last-minute preparations. "The place looks amazing," she said, surveying the modern space with its strategic pops of color and comfortable meeting areas. Exactly the right balance of professional and approachable. Just what we were going for, I agreed. A space where clients feel both confident in our expertise and comfortable enough to have honest conversations. Tyler arrived next, carrying a stunning floral arrangement for the reception desk. "Delivery for the CEO," he announced with a proud grin. I took the flowers, reading the card attached. "To the woman who redefined what's possible, with endless pride and love, T." "They're beautiful," I said, touching his cheek gently. "Thank you for everything, not just the flowers, but for believing in this vision from the beginning. Easiest thing in the world to believe in you," he replied. "You've never failed at anything you've truly set your mind to." My parents and Emma arrived together, all three looking almost as nervous and excited as I felt. My father carried a small wrapped package, which he handed to me with uncharacteristic shyness. "A little something for your new office," he explained, "from all of us." Inside was a beautifully framed photograph of my grandmother, smiling warmly at the camera from her garden. It was a picture I'd always loved but had never owned a copy of. "We thought she should be here for this," my mother said softly. "She always knew you were destined for something special." "And this," Emma added, handing me an envelope. Inside was a check, not from my parents, but from Emma herself. "What's this?" I asked, confused. "My investment in Morgan Creative," she explained. "Fair market value, properly documented by Julia. I've been saving for years, and I can't think of a better use for it than becoming a silent partner in my sister's company." I looked at Julia, who nodded confirmation. "It's all proper and above board. Emma approached me about it months ago. We waited until today to tell you because we wanted everything to be legally settled first." "But why?" I asked Emma. "Because I believe in you," she said simply. "And because families should support each other's dreams, not by taking or demanding, but by investing properly, with respect and boundaries." The symbolism wasn't lost on me. The sister who had once taken without asking was now giving with full transparency and proper documentation. The family that had once overlooked my potential was now celebrating and investing in it. We had come full circle, but on entirely new terms. As guests began arriving for the reception, colleagues from Blackwell, potential clients, friends who had supported me through every step of this journey, I found myself momentarily overwhelmed by the distance we had all traveled. Not just physically, from that empty parking space where my car had been taken, but emotionally and relationally, from broken boundaries to healthy connections, from inequality to mutual respect, from taking to giving. The reception was a success, by any measure. Potential clients expressed genuine interest in our approach to marketing. Industry colleagues offered congratulations and support, and every member of my small team shone in their interactions with guests. Through it all, my family remained present, but not intrusive, supportive, but not domineering. A balance that would have seemed impossible just a few years before. Near the end of the evening, as the crowd was beginning to thin, an unexpected visitor arrived. Nathan, Emma's ex-husband, stepped tentatively through the door, looking uncertain of his welcome. Emma spotted him first, her expression registering surprise but not discomfort. They had maintained a cordial relationship since their divorce, bound by the process of disentangling their finances if nothing else, but they rarely attended the same social events. "I hope it's okay that I came," he said, approaching me with a small gift bag. "I saw the announcement in the business journal and wanted to stop by. Your success is well-deserved, Olivia." "Thank you, Nathan. That's very kind." I accepted the gift bag, genuinely touched by his gesture. Inside was a beautiful business card holder made of polished wood. "I remembered you mentioning once that you collected unique desk accessories," he explained. "This one is made from reclaimed oak from historic Riverdale buildings." The thoughtfulness of the gift, remembering a detail I had mentioned in passing years ago, was unexpected and moving. "It's perfect," I said honestly. "Thank you for thinking of me." As Nathan circulated through the remaining guests, eventually finding his way to a seemingly comfortable conversation with Emma, I reflected on how healing extended beyond just immediate family. Nathan had been part of our dysfunction too, a bystander at times, a participant at others. His return of the watch parts years ago had been a turning point, a concrete action that had helped restore something precious to me. Now, his presence at this milestone event felt like another kind of restoration, acknowledging my worth and success in a way that completed another circle. The weeks following the grand opening of Morgan Creative were a whirlwind of activity. New clients signed contracts, my team settled into their roles, and I found myself navigating the unfamiliar but exhilarating territory of business ownership. Through it all, I maintained the boundaries I had worked so hard to establish. No working past 8 in the evening, no emails on Sundays, time reserved for Tyler and for myself regardless of deadlines or client demands. These weren't just personal preferences, they were the foundation of the company culture I was deliberately creating. "We respect boundaries here, our clients, our teams, and our own," I told each new hire during orientation. "That's non-negotiable." 3 months after the opening, Tyler and I celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary with a weekend trip to a quiet lakeside cabin. As we sat on the dock, watching the sunset paint the water in shades of gold and crimson, he squeezed my hand. "I have something for you," he said, reaching into his pocket. "It's not exactly a traditional anniversary gift, but it felt right." He handed me a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate silver pendant in the shape of a key. "It's beautiful," I said, lifting it to examine the intricate details. "But not a traditional anniversary gift at all. What does it represent?" Tyler smiled, taking the pendant and helping me fasten it around my neck. "It represents what you gave yourself, and all of us, when you decided to stand up for your boundaries. You unlocked a better way for your whole family to relate to each other. You found the key to transforming patterns that had been damaging for generations." Tears pricked at my eyes. "That's a lot of symbolism for such a small pendant." "Big?" "Things often come in small packages," he replied, pulling me close. "Like the moment you decided your car wasn't just a car, but a symbol of your dignity and worth. That small decision changed everything." He was right. That moment in the empty parking space had been a turning point, not just for me, but for my entire family. The decision to treat my stolen car not as a minor inconvenience, but as a significant violation of my boundaries, had set in motion changes none of us could have anticipated. When we returned from our anniversary trip, a surprising invitation awaited us. A formal card requesting our presence at a vow renewal ceremony for my parents' 35th wedding anniversary. A vow renewal? I asked my mother when I called to RSVP. That seems unlike you and Dad. A lot of things we're doing these days would have seemed unlike us a few years ago, she replied with a gentle laugh. But we've been talking about it for a while now. Our marriage has changed so much, for the better, since all the work we've done as a family. It felt right to acknowledge that growth, to make new promises to each other based on who we are now, not who we were when we first married. The ceremony itself was intimate and surprisingly moving. In the community center where we had once had so many difficult family therapy sessions, my parents stood before a small gathering of friends and family and spoke honestly about their journey. "We married young," my father said, his voice steady, but emotional, with ideas about family that we had inherited without questioning. "We loved our daughters deeply, but didn't always know how to show that love equally or appropriately. We created patterns that hurt all of us, especially you, Olivia." I felt a fresh wave of emotion as he addressed me directly, acknowledging publicly what had once been the family's unspoken truth. "The past 7 years have been a journey of learning and unlearning," he continued, "of facing difficult truths about ourselves as parents and as partners. Today, we're renewing our vows not just to each other, but to a different way of being family, one based on respect, on seeing each person clearly, on celebrating differences rather than creating competition." My mother's vows echoed similar themes, speaking of growth and change, of letting go of control and embracing authenticity. "I vow to continue this journey," she concluded, "to keep doing the work even when it's uncomfortable, to value truth over harmony, and to always make space for each family member to be fully themselves." At the reception afterward, I found myself unexpectedly emotional, processing the significance of what we had just witnessed. Emma joined me at my table, passing me a glass of champagne. "Pretty incredible, huh?" she said, nodding toward our parents who were dancing slowly in the center of the room, looking at each other with genuine tenderness. If someone had told me 7 years ago that we'd be here, that they would be here, I'd never have believed it. "Me neither," I admitted. "It's like we're a completely different family now." "But also still ourselves," Emma mused. "Just healthier versions. Like we all had these blocked arteries of resentment and misunderstanding, and somehow they got cleared out, allowing real love to flow again." I smiled at her analogy. "That's surprisingly poetic coming from you. What can I say? Personal growth has made me sentimental." She clinked her glass against mine. "To unblocked arteries and the sister who performed the surgery." After the reception, Tyler and I took a detour on our way home, driving past the apartment complex where my car had been stolen all those years ago. The building looked largely the same, the parking lot filled with vehicles not so different from my old Honda Civic. "Why did you want to come here?" Tyler asked curiously. "Just to see it again," I said. "To remember where it all began." We pulled into an empty space, not the same one, but similar enough to evoke the memory of that day. The panic and confusion I had felt standing there. The dawning realization that my sister had taken something valuable from me without permission. The moment when I had decided, finally, that enough was enough. "It looks so ordinary," Tyler observed. "Just a parking space." "That's the thing about turning points," I replied. "They rarely announce themselves as significant. They're just ordinary moments when we make a decision to respond differently than we have before." Back at home, I found myself unable to sleep, mind still processing the events of the day and the journey that had brought us all to this place of healing and growth. I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Tyler, and made my way to our small home office. On the desk sat a leather-bound journal, a gift from Julia on the day Morgan Creative had opened. For recording the journey, she had written on the first page. Because sometimes we need to remember where we've been to fully appreciate where we are. I had been negligent about using it, too busy with the daily demands of building a business, but tonight felt like the right moment to begin. I opened to the first blank page and began to write. 7 years ago, I stood in an empty parking space and made a decision that would change everything. My car had been taken, not by a stranger, but by my sister. It wasn't the first boundary she had crossed, but I decided it would be the last. That ordinary moment became extraordinary only in retrospect. Only because it was the moment I finally said, enough. What followed wasn't easy. There were confrontations and tears, revelations and reckonings. There were moments when it would have been simpler to back down, to accept the familiar patterns, to keep the peace at the cost of my dignity, but something had shifted inside me that couldn't be unshifted. I had glimpsed what was possible. A life where I was respected, where my boundaries mattered, where my voice was heard. Today, watching my parents renew their vows, I was struck by how far we've all traveled from that empty parking space. Not just me, but all of us. My sister, once entitled and manipulative, now self-aware and respectful. My parents, once enabling and unequal in their treatment, now honest and balanced. Even Nathan, once a peripheral figure in our family drama, now a person capable of genuine kindness and atonement. I've come to understand that boundaries aren't walls we build to keep others out. They're foundations that allow real relationships to flourish. They're not selfish. They're necessary. They don't divide. They clarify. In setting clear boundaries and expecting them to be respected, I didn't lose my family. I gained a healthier one. The journey isn't over. Growth never really is. But looking back at that day in the parking lot, I'm grateful for that moment of clarity, that decision to stand firm. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to teach them how to treat you properly. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give those you love is the opportunity to become better versions of themselves. And sometimes, a stolen car leads to more than just an empty parking space. It leads to a fullness of life and relationship that wouldn't have been possible without that painful beginning. I closed the journal, feeling a sense of completion. Not the completion of our family's journey, that would continue with new challenges and growth opportunities, but the completion of a circle that had begun with that empty parking space. The next morning, as Tyler and I shared coffee on our small patio, my phone rang. It was Emma, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "I've been thinking about something," she began without preamble. "After Mom and Dad's ceremony yesterday, and seeing how much they've changed, how much we've all changed, I want to do something meaningful, something concrete." "What did you have in mind?" I asked. "I want to establish a scholarship," she said, "at the college where I teach, for students who are the first in their family to break unhealthy patterns. You know, first-generation college students from difficult family backgrounds, students who've had to establish boundaries to pursue their education." I was touched by the idea, which seemed perfectly aligned with Emma's journey and her growing sense of purpose. "That sounds wonderful. What would you call it?" There was a slight pause. I was thinking, the Olivia Morgan Scholarship for Resilience and Boundaries. My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "Emma, you don't have to—" "I want to," she interrupted firmly. "You were the catalyst for all of this, Liv. If you hadn't stood your ground that day, if you hadn't forced us all to face our patterns, who knows where we'd be now. Besides, naming it after you feels right. You embody the qualities these students will need to succeed." After we hung up, I shared the news with Tyler, still processing the significance of Emma's gesture. "It's the perfect tribute," he said. Not because you need or want recognition, but because it extends the impact of your journey beyond just our family. Those students will benefit from what you started. He was right. The ripples from that moment in the parking lot continued to spread outward, touching lives beyond our immediate circle. My decision to stand up for myself hadn't just changed my life or my family's dynamics. It was now creating opportunities for others to find their own strength, to establish their own boundaries, to break their own unhealthy patterns. That evening, my parents called to invite us to Sunday dinner, a tradition we had maintained but transformed over the years. What had once been an occasion for subtle competition and favoritism had become a genuine time of connection and mutual respect. Emma mentioned her scholarship idea, my mother said. Your father and I would like to contribute to the initial funding, if that's all right with you. Of course, I said. It's a wonderful initiative. We're so proud of you, Olivia, my father added. Not just for your business success or your marriage, but for who you are. For the change you created in all of us by having the courage to stand up for yourself. As I hung up the phone, I felt a profound sense of peace. Not the peace of perfect resolution or happily ever after, but the deeper peace that comes from authenticity and alignment. Our family wasn't perfect. We still had our moments of tension or misunderstanding. But the foundation had shifted fundamentally from inequality to respect, from taking to giving, from assumption to consent. Family shares everything, my mother had said that day when my car disappeared. In a way, she had been right. Families do share values, history, DNA, connections. But what I had discovered through this journey was that sharing only has meaning when it's done with respect and permission, when it honors the individual within the collective, when it builds up rather than diminishes. Now, 7 years later, our family shared something more valuable than possessions or obligations. We shared a commitment to seeing each other clearly, to respecting boundaries, to celebrating our differences as well as our connections. We shared the hard-won wisdom that real love doesn't demand sacrifice or submission. It offers support without strings, connection without control, belonging without erasure. As the sun set over our small backyard, casting long shadows across the grass, I thought about the journey that had begun with an empty parking space and led to this moment of fullness and peace. It hadn't been easy or straightforward. There had been tears and confrontations, painful revelations and difficult choices. But each step, however challenging, had been necessary to arrive here. At this life built on integrity and mutual respect, these relationships grounded in authenticity rather than obligation. Sometimes it takes a stolen car to find your way home to yourself. And sometimes finding yourself is just the beginning of helping others find their way too. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.